else changed is, and Pyre and I were talking about this, email communication. Because it's much easier to call my freelancer and when I'm on the phone with him, pressure him into being aligned, as opposed to an email which goes out there, may or may not be answered.
And vanishes into the matrix.
Oh, I didn't see your email. You can't say that. When I'm on the phone with you, you can't say that.
They prefer texting to any more direct communication.
But I didn't get your text. I was out of cell service. I was at 2% battery. I didn't have my phone on.
Exactly. That'll be their excuse every time.
Yeah.
My goal was, when he was working on Sonic Disruptors and the artist was poorly, when Mike happened to be in Chicago for something else, went over to the guy's apartment and banged down the door. Give me my pages.
Oh yeah, we were like process servers.
Oh yeah. When I was trained to be a teacher, one of the instructors told us a story when he was teaching. Student said, "I'm sorry, I don't have my work. I left it at home." Well, this kid's home was on the way to the teacher's home, so he stopped by the house, knocked on the door, and the kid answers, "I'm here for the paper you left behind." And the look on his face was like. All right, so it's 12:15. We're going to get started. Otherwise, Roger Esch will get mad at us. We're here about team building, and one way or another, we've read about teams, we've seen teams, we've built teams of our own professionally or as in the stories that we've written or edited. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about what makes a successful team, what has influenced us in our team building. Denny has his experience building the BAT office as a team, which is a unique experience because it set a mark that is still reverberating through the Batman comics to this day, especially now that Nightfall 25th anniversary editions are coming out.
Any plumbing on Batman? No, that was
No plumbing?
No.
No. He even had his shorts on. So.
Yeah, right.
So let's start with. To my left is John Ostrander. Who are you again? What have you done?
Oh, Suicide Squad.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you should. It was your fault.
All right. To my right, a legend, Dennis O'Neil. Obviously Batman and Green Lantern, but he also had a run writing Justice League, and we're going to touch on that. And to my far right is Mark Waid, current defendant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And and the guy who wrote everything these other two did.
Right. And now building a team with the Liberty Brigade. So we talk about in today's marketplace. So what makes a good team? I mean, what is the appeal of a team title versus a solo title?
If you're going to throw it open, one of the appeals, and I think this especially goes for one of my all-time favorites, the Legion of Superheroes, is that with enough people in the group, there is someone for every fan to latch on to. There's someone for every fan to say, that's my favorite, especially because everybody knows what it's like to have a band that they like that nobody else has discovered yet, how cool that feels. So people who attach themselves to Shrinking Violet, or I don't know, as a character.
Bouncing Boy.
Bouncing Boy. It's that same sort of, that same sort of passion, I think. I think that's part of the appeal of a team, is that it's, if it's Superman, it's all or nothing. I like Superman, I don't like Superman. But if it's the Justice League, there's a whole bunch of people I can like.
None of which we thought about when I wrote Justice League in the late 60s. We didn't really think about anything like that. My own personal belief is in America, more is always better. He who has most things when he dies wins. I think that, for your 15 cents, you could get one Superman or half dozen other heroes. I think the guys who ran the companies thought like that. More is better. We didn't think about characters. Stan was beginning to introduce characterization, what actors call funny head characterization, just eccentricities that mark the way Ben Grimm spoke from the way Reed Richards spoke. And we were beginning to, Stan was beginning to have a tremendous influence at that time on writers. And they threw about a lot of stuff that came with the Comics Code and Wortham and Senator Kefauver and all those witch hunters. They didn't want comic characters to use slang. I think the woman who created Sesame Street has done a great service to this country, but she was a little bit tight-assed and didn't want, they thought our children would be corrupted by being exposed to the same language that Mark Twain used. Well, they killed his best book too at the time for a very similar reason. But you just tried to make it interesting. I hated writing the damn things because it was hard. I mean, I could always figure out a dramatic conflict for one character, with the possible exception of Superman. But with the Justice League, I was supposed to use at least 3 of the major characters. We've got Father, Son, and Holy Ghost there. What are you going to put him against pickpockets?
But you know, you're also, in your case on Justice League, I mean, you were coming after 4 issues, right?
60, well, say,
5?
do the math.
64, 65 was the Red
Yeah,
Tornado.
there were 3 giants in there, but there were 3
Right.
very bold issues, so yeah, 65. So you came in after 60. I'm glad we settled this very important conversation.
The point is, it's 1968. Gardner Fox is no longer writing the book. He's been writing since 1960.
Right, so
How's that?
So with the 66th issue, Jenny comes in, right?
So then he comes in. You know, what was expected of you at that point, other than a 22-page story?
Nothing. Julie and I were very much opposites. Julie was, at that time, a real suit and tie guy.
Yeah.
And I was hippie. And we kind of circled around each other cautiously. And within 6 months, it was the most comfortable professional relationship I've ever been in. I think because back when, the guys that Julie worked with were the guys that invented comic books, and especially invented superheroes. And then Julie's contribution, while Stan was teaching everybody a different approach to writing, Julie reinvented the plot part of it. All those guys, somebody just said, were refugees from the pulps. That was their background. That's why guys like Jerry Robinson took liberties, and that would normally infuriate me, but because I don't think writers or artists ever have the right to do that. But in the case of somebody like Jerry, a guy who had been writing detective stories for the pulps for 20 years, didn't know how to tell a visual narrative. They had to learn from the artists. Mm-hmm. They were very lucky to get somebody like Jerry, who I think started working for Bob when he was 19.
He was still in college, yeah.
Yeah.
Still Columbia, yeah.
He turned out to be a really smart guy and a really valuable guy to the comic book world.
All right, so John, team appeal.
Well, first of all, I find that teams can also be found in just regular books and not necessarily team books, because by the time you get done adding your support characters, you want to give them some time and some space, and they help flesh out the main character. It sort of becomes a team book because you get fans who want to see that support character all the time.
It certainly happened in Grimjack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That became very clearly a team book. With Squad, I had the advantage that it was a very different team book, and it was established early on that they didn't like each other. And you fully accepted it because they were all villains. They're all supposed to be the bad guys. So that instantly can create a lot of tension and conflict, and from conflict comes drama. So I
heard
enjoyed
that
it.
from Jim Shooter.
Yeah, thank you.
He always said, I have conflict. No later, page 3.
Oh, good. Yes, I love, by page 3.
Formula always works till you learn you can go beyond that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about people who don't know anything about comics, but they are transferred into the publishing
Oh, yeah.
arm of some company that's in an entirely different business. They don't know about comics, but they have to make a difference. They have to put their stamp on it. And they screw things up every time. Even executives who later grew into the job and became good to work for made that mistake.
When Marvel went
And
bankrupt.
people who work in TV and movies, it's times 10.
When Marvel went bankrupt, it's because the new management brought in a bunch of people who knew it all, couldn't be told anything,
Yeah.
you know, and they drove the most successful comic book company at the time into bankruptcy.
Yep. A lot of bad mistakes. But so, all right. So, Danny talked about the sort of trepidation about writing a team book when he wasn't comfortable with the powers. But Mark, when you got your first team book, was it joy or trepidation?
Oh, it's joy. I mean, this is the whole reason I'm in comics is I like the characters. The whole reason I'm personally in the comics is not because I have a tortured soul with stories to tell. It's because I love these characters, and that's arguably a stupid reason to be in comics, but it seems to work for me. So I think my first stab at anything on a team level was probably some Justice League stuff. I did some Justice League stuff with Brian Augustus Justice League Quarterly. And again, I ran all these problems. You've got, 6, 7, 8 heavy hitters in a team and 30 pages to tell a story. And then in the bigger books, you got to come up with something that is bombastic. One of the things that I think made my job easy, and this circles back to a moment to what Danny was talking about formula, and what Bobby was saying about how breaking formula, every formula works until somebody breaks it. I would argue, and this is off the top of my head, I would argue that Marv Wolfman and George Perez and what they did in New Teen Titans, especially with a specific issue, a specific story called A Day in the Life. It was, people have read this story or read the early
New
George
Teen
Perez.
Titans number 8.
Far fewer of you than I would have thought. I got to tell you, that early New Teen Titans stuff from the early 80s is still good and it still holds up.
And available in collections. You should all read it.
But more to my point, it was the first, it's so easy to take this for granted now, but as a student of history and as a guy who was there right there in the moment, Marv and George took an entire issue of a teen book to just split the characters off and just follow them in their day-to-day stuff. Here's what's going on with Dick Grayson right now for 3 pages. Here's what's going on with Starfire for 3 pages. And maybe they're fighting a villain, maybe they're not. And it was insanity. Like nobody the feeling was, no, who wants to read this? They're not punching Trigon. They're not, they're not fighting Dr. Doom. And yet, for whatever reason, largely because the talents of the men involved, it really worked. And it demonstrated that there is a place. I would argue that you don't want to hit that note often, but I think there is a place in fandom that will look for and enjoy that as well as bombastic stories. But then again,
I feel I should add a postscript to that, though, and it's don't try this at home.
right, yeah. Well,
If you are as skilled and experienced as the guys Mark was talking about, you can bring off that nothing happens story.
right. But you have to be you have to be.
I always looked on the action as my insurance policy. I will give them something to react to. I will follow the formula which I created for myself, action after 5 pages, after 10, and on to the end. I have my, never fail structure for a 22-page superhero, which mostly involves keeping the exposition in its place. And they don't buy this stuff looking for history lessons.
Right.
A guy with a cape and a mask, they want to see that kind of action. And you are cheating them if you don't give it to them. So some people, Mindy
Newell, we're talking about.
has trouble with action, she said in print recently. I didn't. I mean, I enjoy choreographing fights. So you know, that part was easy. Some people just can't, some people can't like comics. I was married to a woman who wanted to like them. And I would bring home Tom Dish, science fiction writers like that, and she really loved that. But there was something about the juxtaposition of copy and image that she couldn't wrap her head around. There was a woman who worked for Joe Orlando at DC who had exactly that problem. For some people, they can't make that work. Was it you that
The foreign language?
yeah, you can't read poetry? Somebody I know.
No. I teach it. I certainly know how to read it. Yeah,
I
it's
think
not my
I've
favorite.
told a lot of stuff I didn't know.
Anyway, Mark.
Well, forgive me for monopolizing, I don't mean to, but spurring on what you say, this is absolutely true. We all do talk to college students, sometimes teach college courses here or there. And Ron Mars, ladies and gentlemen, hello.
Joining us, let's grab a chair for him because I think we're short one.
And you would be surprised at the number of people, you know, like grown-ups, who look at comics and literally can't figure out how to read them. Do I read the text and the picture? Do I read pictures first? Do I read across, or do I read down? And this is not a failing on their part. It's a foreign language. And
Yes.
like any foreign language, if you learn it when you're a kid, it comes supernaturally. It's learning a foreign language as an adult is much harder, and that is why it is harder to get adults into reading comics, as there is potentially a barrier there.
Here is the secret of comics. They are a language. They are a language that makes use of the right side of your brain, which deals with images, and the left side, which deals with logic. And exactly as Mark said, I started reading comics when I was about 5, so I knew the language by the time I was in high school. Other people I know who are good writers and wanted to like comics and wanted to write them, but they came to it as an adult and they couldn't get it. The exception to that is Devin Grayson, who grew up in a commune with a mother who forbade her to be exposed to popular culture of any kind. And Devin told me she had a degree from Stanford in creative writing, and she said she knew the kind of stuff that my guys and I were teaching her had to exist, but she never got it in college. She knew there had to be such a thing as structure that you could impose on a narrative. But it wasn't until she went to work for the comic book company that she really began to understand that, and then she picked it up month to month. She got better. You could see it happening.
Well, what's interesting is, you know, she was discovered from her fan fiction. She had characterization down, so she just had to learn structure.
Right, but
Yeah,
she
she
wrote
wrote-
purely prose.
Yes.
Right.
And she wrote smutty fan fiction.
I wasn't going to mention that publicly. Yes.
I once asked her if she minded if Chip Delaney writes porn.
No, it was some of the best Teen Titans porn I've ever read.
And I thought I guess it was Scott who gave me some of Devin's fan fiction. If our characters were allowed to have sex lives, these are the sex lives they'd have.
Yes.
Understand the characters.
So, let's bring this back to the topic. Just a little before we...
Isn't the topic sex? I thought that.
It's always in the background. But team building, you
We're
know,
all parents here.
since we're talking about Teen Titans, you know, I want to point out that when Marv and George created the Teen Titans, Marv was very calculated. He took the core members of the Titans. He had Robin, Wonder Girl, Kid Flash, and then he created all these new characters with George. But he had a science fiction character in Starfire. He had a mystic character in Raven. He picked up an obscure supporting character in Beast Boy, called him Changeling, and then added Cyborg as the misfit.
Yeah.
You know, the Spock or Data character.
And Beast Boy was the jokester.
Yes. So he had all these elements, so Marv knew he could tell a wide range of stories. So when building a successful team, you know, how calculated do you get? Like champions.
Full champions. Let's hear from Ron.
Ron,
Hi, I'm late. Because
Yes.
I didn't know we were doing this.
Yeah, it's in some of the program book. It says you worked on Skull Kickers and Cross Genesis.
You would assume that somebody gave me a program book. Anyway, sorry I'm late. Thanks for hanging out. What the hell are we talking about?
Team building.
Team building.
When you,
Team building. Look, I think the Mets need an outfielder for next year.
yeah, and probably better relievers, but let's move on.
I
I
found,
really like baseball.
Ron and I do, yes.
Wow.
as Met fans, I don't know that we like it, we just tolerate it.
We know how to suffer.
But I did go to the Orioles game last night, so I got to watch your team lose. Instead of mine.
What is that, 110, 111?
So anyway, so in a general sense, I've written not a lot of team books, but a fair chunk. And I think the thing that I always find with a team book is that a lot of times you inherit your roster.
Sure.
You can make additions and subtractions. When I wrote Stormwatch for Image, this was pre-Wildstorm getting bought up by DC. I was pretty much handed the roster, and I went, well, okay, I'm going to kill half these characters because I don't like them, and they all do the same thing. They fly and shoot energy bolts, and our flying and shoot energy bolts quotient was pretty much filled up. And then they said, well, we're gonna publish issue 25 early. I was taking over with issue 10, so you can't really change the team until you get to issue 25. So I think that the key in doing a team book is that they all have to be different from each other. They can't all fly and shoot energy bolts. So you want to have some sort of differences in power sets and also in personalities. Otherwise, they're all the same dude and or girl. So I think that the team books that are the most successful are the ones that have, like we're talking about with Teen Titans, that everybody has a different role, and everybody, I think, more than anything, even beyond the power sets, has a different personality. Because ultimately, you read this stuff because you care about the characters. You don't read this stuff to see somebody shoot energy bolts out of their hands. Especially now, when you can go see it at the movies. Like 20 years ago, you couldn't see that at the movies.
Yeah.
But now you can, now you can get your epic battle scenes like for real right in front of you. I think ultimately, team books are even more so than solo books, soap operas.
Yeah.
And you come to the book to see if if Nightwing and Starfire are going to have sex with Charlotte Kate.
Yeah. Oh,
I think
we've read that.
David's here.
All right. Now, John, personalities. That's a great way to say the Suicide Squad. As we were building the team, how did the personalities play for you?
Well, my specialty with the squad was I wanted the B players.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the ones, in fact, I think we asked people that, who do you not want to play with and are willing to give to us? Oh, by the way, we're going to kill some of them. So, and that's what I like, because that gave me more freedom. We picked Deadshot because I liked the costume. He had no personality. He had a few facts, but no personality.
Mm-hmm.
So I was free to build on that. And what I built on was I'd seen a documentary, and they were talking to a hitman in prison.
Ah.
Coldest son of a bitch I've ever seen in my life. I mean, even on TV, he scared the life out of me. But his whole attitude was, I don't care if I die, so why should I care if you die? And he said, Deadshot.
Yeah.
And because Deadshot didn't have a death wish, he just didn't care. And he didn't care about his life. Your life is meaningless to him. So that gave me something to work from. And again, by using all the B characters and then adding things to their characters, that made them mine, gave me room to play with them, and nobody was going to ask for them back anytime soon, until we got successful with it.
Well, then there was also, you mixed in heroes and villains, which made
Yeah.
the book even more unique for its day, because the Legion are all nice guys.
Yes.
Justice League, all heroes. So,
You're the one who.
Wouldn't want to get seated next to him at a dinner.
well, no, because the feathers get into the suit.
Yeah. Problem.
But you're the one who.
I think everybody in this room is probably a fan, and I must caution you. Everything these guys said is really correct, but you probably have an emotional investment in certain characters, and anytime Uberman appears, it's going to seem right to you. And if Uberman appears and violates some piece of continuity, it's going to seem terribly wrong. That's the biggest problem I've seen with fans turning pros. They go into it with some presuppositions. And really, it's a job. You have to make the story work. And you have to allow it to change. And I can't teach people to write like J.D. Salinger, but I can teach you what a structure, a plot structure is, what a narrative structure is. So I can, that's something that, you know, it's left brain stuff, you can do it. But if you get good at this work, eventually you will find your own way of doing it, and you shouldn't be afraid of that. We all imitate somebody for the first, 50 jobs. And little by little, one of the things I was told by the Marvel guys when I first went to work for them is 20 copy units per page. So there had to
Word
be
balloons and captions or
word
units?
balloons and captions, not sound effects.
Okay.
And later when I went to work for Dick at Charlton, he didn't have any rules like that, and I thought, thank God. I mean, you had to pad and stretch to make that work. I found usually about 10 copy units was about right. But you find those things out. There are some people who write heavy, there are some people who write light.
Now, okay, you were talking about investment in the characters. So, Mark, when you took over the Legion, probably the team that most of any of you that you've written, the Legion had the most fervent fan base.
Oh, God, yes.
And thanks to what Paul Levitz and Keith Giffen brought to the book, had established personality. So, what were your challenges there?
Here's, when it comes to building or rebuilding a team.
Talking to the mic, please.
I'm sorry. Okay. When it comes to, is it better? Okay. When it comes to building or rebuilding a team, that Marv, as you pointed out, sort of has his system of let's get a bruiser, let's get a jokester, and that's great, and a lot of writers do have that sort of system. My system is more how does this character relate, or how does this character key off of this other character? How does this character, when I say Champions is a good example, like Champions in part was built because if I put this character in the mix, how do they relate to each other? What kind of conflicts can I get internally on this team to flesh out all the times they're not punching Dr. Doom in the face? And the reason you do that is because first off, it makes them human, and secondly, because it's just fun to write that way. But thirdly, when you're writing a team book, the general complaint from fans and sometimes from people who write the team book is, well, I can't really do anything with Batman. I mean, Batman's got his own book, he's just in my team. I can't really do anything permanent with Batman. I don't own Batman. That's true, but what you do own is Batman's relationship to the other people on the team. Take Tower Battle as an example, a story in which Batman was revealed to have secret plans to take down each of the Justice Leaguers should that ever need to be the case. And the fact that he had these plans was not the problem. The fact that he didn't tell the other Justice Leaguers that he had these plans, that's what made them give him the side eye and basically vote him out of the league. And that is, I would argue that has sort of made a semi-permanent imprint on how Batman's relationship works with these other heroes. So that's something we were able to do in Justice League that you weren't able to do in Batman. Or how Aquaman and Wonder Woman had a thing going in my Justice League stories because you own that relationship. So when it's Legion, when it's Champion, Justice League, whatever, that's, from a personal level, that's where I come from. Building within the team, and then I figure we'll always find some way to hit Dr. Doom.
One of the things that we did in Squad was the use of subplots. And a subplot is generally continued through several several issues. I think Paul Levitt's once said you started in one issue, and the second issue, you continue it while you start a new.
Yeah.
one.
And the ABC.
The concrete, it was every issue, you graph it out, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's right.
A plot, B plot, C plot. Paul would have the system where
Yeah,
A plot
that
was,
Paul's, yeah.
A plot was, say, of 20 pages. A plot was going to be 14 pages. And then B plot was going to be like, 4 pages. And C plot would be the other 3 pages. And next issue, you solve the A plot, that rotates out. B plot, which was 7 pages, becomes 14 pages and becomes the A plot. C plot bumps up, and then you put in a new C plot. And it was an amazing system that is seamless because you don't see it. But now that you see that, if you go back and look at Paul's run on Legion of Superheroes, it's clear as day.